Next up, I'm going to introduce you to a concept that anyone who's had any experience in marketing may be familiar with. It's called know, like, trust. So before anyone will engage with you in any scenario, making a sale, hiring you as a contractor, first they need to know you, then they need to like you, and then they need to trust you. So let's look at know first of all. Who are you? What do you do? Why should I care? Like. Do I like you? Can I relate to you? Trust. Are you an expert? Can you help me? Have others had success? It's not until you've been through these 3 steps, know, like, trust, that anyone is going to hire your services as a contractor. So now you've made all of these connections on LinkedIn, what are you doing with them? You need to get social. It's called social media after all. You need to engage. How do you do that? First off, by liking relevant, positive posts. By liking and commenting meaningfully on insightful posts, you tell the algorithm that you're an active user. The more active you are, the more profile views you'll receive, and the more visible you'll become on the platform. Next up, comment meaningfully on relevant, positive posts. How do you comment? Well, politely, thoughtfully, and in a full sentence or more. True, great post, interested, will not get you very far. Key golden rule, do not get into an argument. Next up, put a like on the relevant, positive comments of others. And finally, if you're going to post your own stuff, mention people who like your posts. So when someone likes your post, say thanks at whoever. When you put the at symbol with their name, it will put a hyperlink into them as a person. So thanks at whoever, great to hear from you, and variations like that. That will drag in more eyeballs. Be discerning about what you engage in and the way in which you engage. Don't be a sheep, have a mind of your own. Be careful what you say. Some posts get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. One of those views could be a potential recruiter or hiring manager. LinkedIn should be a pleasure, not a pressure. Engage with integrity at all times. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, take a step back. Here's a simple way to find the sort of content that you might want to comment or like on. So, think of 3 to 5 topics that are interesting to your clients. Make sure they are topics you're knowledgeable and passionate about yourself. Type in turn, each one of those topics in the search box on LinkedIn. Sort the results to content, and then comment on any article that fits the criteria of what I mentioned earlier. Make sure you add value. So, if you do all this, congratulations. More people now know you, like you, and trust you, which is the name of the game. Consistency is key. Make this part of your routine, in or out of contract. Let me just say that last part again. Even when you are in a contract, you must keep this up. Do, rinse, repeat. Do, rinse, repeat. It's this consistency over time that is the secret to growing a great network that you can leverage anytime. Okay, the next part of our channels to market is the recruitment consultant. Not too many people know the ins and outs of how a recruitment agency works. I've been lucky enough to work very closely with a recruitment agency, and I've got a great deal of knowledge about how the different types of individuals in those businesses work. This is crucial knowledge when it comes to engaging with a recruitment agency. You want to get a relationship with recruiters that wins for you and wins for them. First up is the contingent recruiter. This will be the bulk of the type of recruiter that you work with. But what do we mean by a contingent recruiter? A contingent recruiter takes job orders from a company on a non-exclusive basis. This means that they're up against a number of other recruiting firms simultaneously trying to find the same candidates to fill those roles. A contingent recruiter only gets paid if and when they place a candidate. It's a winner-takes-all environment. Their fees vary dependent upon the deals that have been struck between the recruitment agency and the business that they're recruiting for, between 5 at the very lowest end of the spectrum and up to 20 or more % of a day rate. But they only place candidates in 5 to 10% of the roles that they're recruiting for. Contingent recruiters are typically on a very low or modest basic salary, relatively high commission, and those who succeed earn well. It's a very target-driven sales environment. This is exactly how the vast majority of contract recruitment works. The other type of recruiter is what we call retained. This is where a company selects one firm to manage the search process. This recruiter will be the only one working on the job. It's an exclusive relationship with no competition. The recruiting firm will be paid an upfront fee to start the search and paid the rest upon completion. Fees are around about 30% of the placed candidate's day rate, and the company and recruiter will have a close, deep and collaborative relationship if it's working successfully. Retained searchers primarily work in the C-suite and executive level candidate roles. There are some niche contract and senior specialisms that retained recruiters would also get involved in. Why am I telling you this? Well, first of all, everything that I've told you there is broad brush. There will be differences and nuances between different types of recruiters, but contingent and retained are the primary two, and the sorts of fees and levels that I've talked about there are what most people will be working within the bounds of. This next part about recruitment consultants is absolutely vital to understand. Many people with whom I speak, many of the comments I see on LinkedIn, much of the bad reputation that recruitment consultants can sometimes get is driven by people misunderstanding what the relationship here is between a recruitment consultant and their client. For both the contingent and retained recruiter, they get paid by the employer. The main portion of their payment is performance-based. They do not work for you. Let me say that again. They do not work for you. Their client, the person who pays the bill, is the employer. So, how best to work with recruitment consultants? First of all, you must recognise that some good and some bad. Recruiters are often slated, and there's many people on LinkedIn complaining about recruiters. There are bad practitioners in every industry. With the right recruiters, you get tons of leverage and strong results across your career. Next up, go long. Too often, a recruiter contacts a candidate for a specific job, and if it's not successful, the candidate never hears from them again. Or a candidate makes an introduction with a recruiter, and when the recruiter doesn't have any leads for them at that exact moment, they get frustrated and move on. Candidates can't always expect recruiters, especially specialists, to have a perfect role for them, and recruiters can't expect candidates to jump at every opportunity. The best recruitment relationships are long-term. Building long-term relationships is the best way to succeed. Next up, specialist equals results. Anyone can become a recruiter. There are lots of generalist recruiters out there. What you need to do is find the specialists in your field. They'll better understand your unique skills and talents, and they're also more likely to be able to find you a contract. Finally, be open. Sometimes candidates are cagey with certain information, and it always ends up hurting their candidacy. You need to be open with your recruiter about your expectations, whether that's about rate, location, responsibility, etc. If you already have an existing relationship with another recruiter in the same office, don't reach out to a different recruiter on the sly, hoping to get a better result. Don't pretend to be fine with a job description, then go to an interview and try and haggle for more responsibility or rate. These are the things that will damage your relationship with a recruiter. The relationship between a candidate and a recruiter is built on trust. Some good, some bad. Like any profession, there are some good and some bad recruitment consultants. Recruiters often get a bad rap. There's a cult of people on LinkedIn complaining about recruiters, sending them unsuitable opportunities. The truth is that there are bad recruiters, possibly because anyone can call themselves a recruiter without necessarily having knowledge of or experience in the jobs they're recruiting for. But there are bad practitioners in every industry. It's worth it because with the right recruiter, you can get tons of leverage and strong results across the entire duration of your career. Working with a specialist is likely to get you more results. Anyone can hang up their shingle and start recruiting. There are lots of generalist recruiters out there who will agree to fill any job in any industry, seeing the potential money at the end of the line. These recruiters are often very active at reaching out to candidates they don't know at all, which is no surprise because they don't have the investment in building up networks in the same way as a specialist would. They're less able to build long-term relationships because they might be filling an IT job today and a truck driver job tomorrow. If you're thinking of working with a recruiter, reach out and find a specialist in your field. They're not only more likely to understand your unique skills and talents, they're also more likely to find you a job. This especially goes for skill-intensive niches like IT, supply chain, and various executive positions. You want someone who knows your industry and function well, rather than someone who's throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. The best recruiters and candidates think long term. What so often leads to frustration, both for recruiters and candidates, is short-term thinking when it comes to the recruitment-candidate relationship. Too often, a recruiter contacts a candidate for a specific job, and if it's not successful, the candidate never hears from them again. Or a candidate makes an introduction with a recruiter, and when the recruiter doesn't have any leads from them at that exact moment, they get frustrated and move on. Candidates can't and shouldn't expect recruiters, especially specialists, to always have a perfect job for them, and recruiters can't expect candidates to jump at every opportunity. The best recruitment relationships are long-term. My own practice has connections with individuals we worked with for over 10 years, both of candidates and later clients. It's important for recruiters and candidates to realise that building a long-term relationship is the best way to succeed. Finally, you should be open. Sometimes candidates are cagey with certain information, and it always ends up hurting their candidacy. You need to be open with your recruiter about your expectations, whether it's about salary, location, responsibility, whatever it may be. If you already have an existing relationship with another recruiter in the same office, don't reach out to a different recruiter behind their back, hoping to get a better result. Don't pretend to be fine with a job description, then go to an interview and try and haggle for more responsibility or salary. It's happened quite a few times and it never works for the candidate. So, how should you deal with the initial contact with a recruitment consultant? How do you get that relationship going positively? Most of the time, the conversation will go like this. Are you free to speak at the moment? This is code for, are you at work? Can you talk openly and freely? You might need to move to a safe space to go and have that conversation. So that's your trigger to go and find somewhere private you can have an open conversation. Next up, they'll typically explain a brief role description. Usually, but not always, the client will be confidential at this stage. The reason the client is kept confidential at this stage, if you think back to what I told you about contingent recruiters, is there are multiple recruitment consultants competing for work with the same client. And if they give away the client name at this stage, that's an open invitation for competition to muscle in. That's why the client is kept confidential, in case you're wondering. Another part of the conversation will talk about your availability. Guess what the answer is to that question? Yes, you're always available. It's even okay to say, yes, I'm available, even if you're not available, as long as you've only got something like an up to 4-week notice period. Many times, it's can you start tomorrow? And then by the time that notice periods and IT kit and whatnot is in place, it's taken 2 or 3 weeks to have that conversation. So as long as you're on a 4-week notice period or less, you are instantly available. You'll be able to negotiate on holidays, etc. You can work it out later. Next up, rate. If asked, give a +50, -50 day rate range, but say flexible for the right role, location and duration. The key 3 words to remember in your interaction, particularly your initial interaction with a recruitment consultant, are positivity, flexibility and certainty. Why are those 3 things important? Well, the recruitment consultant will be having multiple of these conversations with your competitors in the pipeline. Don't be offended if the recruiters you contact don't gush and coo over your background and your CV. They're very busy people. They're paid to fill openings for clients and not provide free career counselling. They do what they can, but they've got a job to do. Don't be upset if a recruiter doesn't offer to represent you. Imagine that your recruiter is Simon Cowell and you're on the X Factor. Simon might say, look, you're very talented and I love your singing voice, but we just don't get a lot of calls for your type of performer. It's not personal. The recruiter is not going to be able to spend time with you unless they think they can place you in a role relatively soon. You need to make yourself the standout candidate that they're rooting for, the one that they think is most likely to bring them success. Remember what we said about the payment mechanics. They're only paid if and when they make a successful placement, so it's in their interests to whittle down the field to the candidates that they believe that have the highest chance of making a placement. Here are 14 quick-fire top tips that you need when dealing with recruitment consultants. Number 1, know your goals. Know where you're headed, know what you want. Have your speech prepared. When the recruitment consultant asks you what you're looking to do next, you'll be able to rattle it off the top of your head. Next up, keep your CV current and tailored. Make sure it's always up to date so you can fire it out at a moment's notice. Your latest current role on there as your current details. And tailored, so if you have 2, 3 or more versions of your CV that are more tailored to specific types of opportunity, so maybe you have skills, for example, as a project manager or as a business analyst or as a PMO lead, for example, you can at any one moment in time fire out a CV that has all of those key skills pulled out on it. Third, you're interviewing them too. Don't forget, it's a 2-way relationship. Make sure you're comfortable with the individual. Make sure that they're going to represent you to the best of their ability. Fourth, be courteous and respectful. You wouldn't believe how many times I've heard people be condescending and disrespectful to recruitment consultants. These guys are there to help you do a job. At least have the courteous, professional mannerisms with them that they deserve. Fifth, follow through with your commitments. If you say you're going to send your CV in the next couple of hours, send it in the next couple of hours. Remember, these guys are filtering you out too, so you need to follow through with your commitments. 6, trust recruiters to do their job. Self-explanatory. 7, help recruiters help you. Work with them, share information with them, be open with them. That leads us on to 8, be open about working with other recruiters. These guys know the score, they know it's a competitive industry. It's okay to share that you have other recruitment relationships. What will be a turn-off though, and one you need to watch for, is if you are applying for the same role with multiple people. Recruiters may ask you questions about this if you've already been put forward for a role through another recruiter. 9, tailor your communications. You may have some boilerplate templates that you use, but always make sure that you tailor each communication with the recruitment consultant each time. Keep the conversation personal. 10th, ask for constructive criticism. If it's clear that a recruitment consultant's not going to put you forward for an open vacancy, ask them why. Ask them to be honest. Ask them to be blunt. That constructive criticism can only ever help you grow. 11th, help recruiters find you online and offline. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Make sure your CV is valid. Make sure all of your details are relevant. 12, track your submissions. We've got a little bit of detail on that coming up soon. 13th, something recruitment consultants will love you for, offer up referrals. Often during the conversation, even if the role isn't right for you, they'll ask you, do